spending my second Vassa at Yod Thon. After leaving Ban Kok Thian-Ngern, I continued on to Danga until it was time to enter the rains retreat, Vassa. This year, I would spend the Vassa at Yod Thon in Si Chiang Mai district, Nong Khai province. There were 10 monks and novices, samanera, in our group. There was an expansive forest with a great assortment of native wildlife. There were tigers, wild bison, wild boars, muntjac, deer, and much more. The monks and samaneras familiar with the terrain knew where tigers thrived and where fierce ghosts resided. When I arrived, they arranged for me to go to those locations. Chandai Cave was situated approximately 2 kilometers away from the group. As the skies darkened, I heard a Kruba whisper to a samanera, "Keep it a secret. Let's see how brave and able this forest tradition Kammatthana monk will be." Upon hearing this, I wondered what he meant, so I strolled over and asked them what they were talking about. But the Kruba and the samanera evaded the question and said, "Oh, it's nothing. There is a courageous and purposeful forest tradition monk here this year. We'll see how well he practices mental cultivation, bhavana." Once it was time, the samanera escorted me to Chandai Cave, which was near Kokhom Cave. The cave came with a raised platform and a path prepared for walking meditation, Jankama. Before dusk, the samanera took his leave of me. He took a few steps and turned back to say, "Kruba, don't grab your alms bowl and flee the cave in the middle of the night." And he hurriedly took off. I thought to myself, something strange will surely happen tonight, and told myself, whatever happens, I will not flee the cave. If I have to die, so be it. I went about setting up my monk umbrella tent, glod, cleaning the cave, and procuring water. I focused on walking meditation and found great solitude in that moment. After the sun had set, from somewhere off in the distance, a tiger began to roar in intervals. Once one tiger began to roar, 2 to 3 other tigers responded in kind. One tiger roared over here, another roared over there. They threw their thunderous bellows at one another, while all the animals in the vicinity kept still and silent. There was heightened caution in the dark. As the tigers' roars drew nearer, I began to feel afraid. In that moment, I made a solemn asseveration, Satcha Atithana, within my mind. If I have ever committed demerit, papa, and bad karma towards these tigers, I am ready to pay retribution. But if we have no past karmic relationship, may the tigers not harm me. And then I continued to contemplate and practice mental cultivation. That night, my mind, citta, couldn't settle into meditative calm. Because the tigers' roars weren't that far off, I was forced to listen to them in a state of high alert. I kept my eyes peeled so that I would see the tigers approach. I didn't catch a wink of sleep throughout the entire night and early morning. Once it was time, I left the cave to go on my alms round, Bindapata. The monks and samaneras observed me, but I didn't exhibit any symptoms that would give me away. I acted nonchalant, as if nothing had happened. When I met up with the monks and samaneras, they asked, "How did it go? Was the mental cultivation good last night?" I gave a short reply. The mental cultivation was good last night. When the timing was right, I went and asked Ācariya Sombun, "Ācariya, what can I do to prevent a tiger from coming near?" He responded, "It's not difficult at all. In the middle of the night, make a fire in the cave. Because the tiger is afraid of fire, it will flee on its own." Now I knew what to do. That night, I built a fire and did walking meditation. Then when it was time, I entered the cave and did sitting meditation. As for the tigers, they continued their fierce concert of roars. I hadn't slept at all the previous night. Feeling sleepy now, I reclined and fell into a slumber. I awoke around 2 a.m. and noticed the fire had significantly diminished. Afraid it would be extinguished, I hurriedly pulled open the netting of my klot in order to build up the fire. The instant I pulled the net aside, I saw a tiger sitting in front of the fire. Once the tiger spotted me, it leapt into the forest. I ducked back under the klot. There was no more sleeping that night. All I could manage was to sit and recite meditative mantras, parikama. At the slightest crack or crunch, my eyes would fly open. I wondered, how long had this tiger been sitting beside me? The wide mesh on my kot would have allowed it to see me clearly. It could have eaten me if it had so desired. But I didn't have a karmic relationship with this tiger. I told myself, from now on, none of the other tigers will eat me either. From now on, I will cultivate as much mental fortitude as possible. I will train myself to be proficient in meditation so that I will have the strength to battle my fear of tigers. In every posture, my mind will always be composed and focused in concentration. As for using wisdom, paññā, to contemplate the three common characteristics, tailakkhana, according to the universal truths, satya Dhamma, well, those efforts will have to be trimmed back for now. I will have to fortify my mind's strength first. The following day, I had the chance to ask some huntsmen whether tigers were truly afraid of fires in the middle of the night. They told me, "You mustn't do that, Kruba. Once the tiger sees the fire, it will head straight for it. It thinks that there must be a dog sleeping by the fire, so it comes to collect its next meal. You're lucky that the tiger didn't snatch you off to eat, Kruba. Don't build a fire anymore, all right? If the tiger is hungry, it might eat you." The next night, I did walking meditation and sitting meditation as usual. Suddenly, it was as if a gigantic door had slid over the cave's mouth, sealing it shut. There was a single door panel. In that same instant, I heard knocking on the door and a woman's voice. "Ācariya, Ācariya, open the door." I knew that women were not allowed to be with a monk one-on-one, so I told her, "No, women cannot come in. I am alone here and you are forbidden from entering." The woman said, "If you don't open the door for me, I will open it myself." And she really opened the door and entered. I didn't have time to steady myself before she embraced me from behind and said, "Ācariya, you must disrobe and come live with me as my husband. I liked you from the moment I saw you enter this cave." I told her, "I have resolved to be a monk for my entire life. I absolutely will not disrobe and spend my life as a layperson." She presented an ultimatum. "If you don't promise to disrobe, I will suffocate you to death with my embrace." At that, she squeezed tighter, constricting my breath. With the outlook appearing bleak, I hatched a plan. "Wait a second. I'm going to spend the Vassa here in this cave. At the end of the Vassa, we can discuss it." She agreed. Before she released her grip, she said, "Don't forget your promise. I will return to collect it at the end of the Vassa." And she walked out. My mind, citta, withdrew from the meditative state. The cave was the same as usual. Nothing had changed. The door that sealed the cave's opening was nowhere to be found. I applied wisdom to consider what had just happened. What was the woman supposed to represent? I immediately understood that it was a personal matter. If I had interpreted her to be an actual ghost, I would only worry. I contemplated and decided that for the time being, I would have to regularly exercise deep meditative calm in order to cultivate the mental strength to combat my fears. The more I focused on meditative mantras, the more the mind became calm and concentrated. One night, the citta felt a strong need to enter a calm meditative state. So I directed the citta into a deep state of calm. At first, I relied on pairing the citta with the meditative mantra of Put-to, Put-to. Once the mind began to feel serene, I stopped the recitations. Then I focused mindfulness on every inhale and exhale. The heightened awareness of each breath ensured that the mindfulness never faltered. When I inhaled, I was keenly aware of the coarse quality of the breath. Then I trained the awareness on each progressively refined breath until they were as refined and delicate as could be. Thereafter, I released all mindfulness of breath and directed all heightened concentration toward puru, or focused consciousness. I didn't direct this focused consciousness to observe my breathing at all. I only focused on monitoring the focused consciousness. I can't even pinpoint when the citta converged into calm that night. At daybreak, the citta withdrew from the meditative state. Upon coming out of meditation, it felt like I didn't have any breath. Even if I had breath, it seemed like I wasn't breathing. There was a perpetually still quality. To even think of the Put-to mantra felt so rough and raw. Likewise, watching my intake and outtake of breath felt coarse and harsh. My only recourse was to train my focused consciousness on focused consciousness. Whatever posture I found myself in, I was constantly in a state of equanimity, or ubekha. This persisted for around 7 days. Deep down, I knew that these symptoms were unequivocally misaligned with the path and fruit of enlightenment, magga phala nibbāna. It was likely just an advanced stage of an immaterial meditative absorption, arupacana. Now that it had happened, I needed to find a cure. I considered which teacher, Ācariya, would be able to help me fix it and realized that no one could. I would have to find my own way out of the situation. I searched for Dhamma metaphors to draw the citta out of the stillness, but found my wisdom out of commission. It was simply still at all times. Previously, I had contemplated Dhamma metaphors to the point of unobstructed clarity. Now, I could not think or contemplate anything at all. Ordinarily, the 4 elements jatutatu were merely the 4 elements. They were not linked to or colored by the citta's symptoms in any way. I recognized that allowing the mind to be pleased with the state of equanimity would be a sure path into the Brahma world, Brahmaloka. But my sole determination was to achieve the path and fruit of enlightenment. Therefore, I had to find a way out of arupacana. I realized that I had to read as much as I could. Once I prescribed myself this cure, I picked up the monastic code of discipline, Patimokkha, and read it. On the first attempt, I didn't want to read it, but compelled myself to. That time, I read silently. The following times, I read aloud. The longer I read aloud, the more the citta started to peel away. As I became aware that the citta had begun to extract itself from the arupacana meditative state, I intensified the reading. After reading for 3 days, the citta fully exited the serene state and returned to normal. I purposefully considered the cause of the tranquil symptoms. I understood that it stemmed from my extreme fear of tigers, as well as my scheme to prevent the female ghost from coming to collect on my promise. I had focused on reciting mantras and was constantly meditating in every posture. I trained the citta on one-pointedness of the mind, ekaggata. This unblinking awareness of the citta produced an unwavering state of meditative calm. Ultimately, the citta fell into the aforementioned arupacana. It was lucky that I had cultivated a wisdom-based personality. Otherwise, I would have certainly died in that serene state of arupacana. There was no way out of the meditative absorption. If I had died, I would have wasted my life. My life would have been meaningless. I wouldn't have made it to enlightenment. My experience with arupacana was a critical lesson. I would not lead the citta into this kind of deep meditation anymore. Thereafter, I laid new plans for practice. When I meditated, it would only be to achieve adequate calm before channeling that strength toward continuous wisdom contemplations. I would not allow the mind to constantly dwell in a continuous state of calm, like I had previously. The only exception would be when the citta needed deep rest from a state of meditative tranquility. I would permit it on occasion. But I decided that once the citta had released from the meditative state, I would have to immediately use wisdom to contemplate. Normally, whatever posture I found myself in, I would regularly and constantly use wisdom to contemplate universal truths, Dhamma. In other words, I would more frequently contemplate than meditate. My habitual contemplations were like a daily routine. Whenever I was tired from thinking, I would direct the citta into steadfastly focused concentration in order to draw strength to continue my wisdom contemplations. Thus, tranquility concentration, samatha kammatthana, and insight concentration, vipassana kammatthana, are interlinked techniques. You cannot disregard either one. Which technique you start or end with is a matter of each practitioner's style and personality, or a matter of time. Sometimes you enjoy practicing meditation before wisdom. Sometimes you enjoy using wisdom before meditation. This is referred to as meditation to train wisdom or wisdom to train meditation. Do what works for you or what fits with your personality. It's like when you are walking toward a destination. Whether you step left before right or right before left, you alternate between the two and eventually reach your destination. The two modes of practice follow the same principle. Once you fully understand this, your practice will be free of obstacles. You won't become confused and question whether your practice is correct or whether your practice is incorrect. You won't worry about this at all. You will not waste your time on any doubts or reservations about practice.